Hi guys, Mr. C here, and I bet you're wondering what I'm wearing. This is an actual fox fur. Up in the northern part of Canada, up in northern BC and up in the Northwest Territories and Yukon, hunting fox for their fur is a fairly common practice. And that's what this is actually a real fox's fur which I got up north. So this is actually original. The story we're going to read is called Red Parka Mary. Let's get started. This is the story of Red Parka Mary, which is also a wits book. Walk away, ignore, talk it out, and seek help is what WITS stands for. Choke cherry jelly and rabbit fur remind me of Christmas and Red Parka Mary. At first, I was scared of her. She didn't hide behind the trees waiting to pop out and scare me, nor did she ever try to chase after me. But there was something about her that scared me. It might have been the way Mary dressed. It didn't matter if it was 40 below zero or 40 above. She always wore big floppy moccasins lined with rabbit fur, thick gray wool socks, 3 or 4 sweaters heavily darned at the elbow, and a Montreal Canadian hockey toque pulled down over her straggly gray hair. She was missing 4 or 5 front teeth, and her skin was brown and wrinkled. Yet, that wasn't what scared me. I think it was because even though I was only 7, someone, somehow, sometime, had told me that because of her brown eyes, I should be frightened. I couldn't help it. Every time I passed by her house, I would stare at her. Sometimes she would wave, but every time that happened, I would get embarrassed, turn my head back to the road, and rush off for home. I must have done that for what seemed like years until the time I heard her call. It made me stop immediately. No one had ever called me Mister before. "Hey, Mister," she repeated. "Take these to your mum," she said as she held out a pail brimful of choke cherries. "I've got all I need." I stood there in the middle of the road with my mouth hanging open, not moving and not knowing what to do. Mary eventually carried the pail halfway, plunked it down on the edge of the road, and shuffled back to her front door. I didn't know what to do. Should I take them? Should I leave them? Finally, I decided that maybe Mom would know what to do with them. She did. When that pail of choke cherries turned into jelly and ended up on the breakfast table, I decided that maybe Mary wasn't so scary after all. Mom agreed. "That Mary," she chuckled to herself. "I should have given her the whole bag of sugar instead of just lending her a cup." The next morning, I took Mary her pail filled with a bag of sugar. She smiled a toothless grin and patted me on the head. For the first time on the way home from school that afternoon, I stopped when she waved at me from her front step. "Hi, Mary," I said. "Hey, Mister," she called. "Come here for a minute." She held out a piece of warm, freshly baked bread sprinkled generously with white sugar. We sat on the top step and talked, or at least she talked. I mostly listened. I found out the reason why Mary wore those moccasins. Her bunions were so bad she couldn't wear shoes, and she wore 4 sweaters because that was all she owned. Only in the summertime did her 4 sweaters make her feel comfortable. In winter, unless she was baking bread, she was always cold. I learned many things from Mary that year on my way home from school. She taught me how to snare a rabbit, how to skin it, how to thread a needle, how to make leather soft and supple, and finally, how to line my own homemade moccasins with rabbit fur. It was getting close to Christmas when I decided that I was going to do something special for Mary. Downtown, I saw the perfect parka in Henderson's storefront window. It was bright red with a fur-lined hood, and although it was probably 3 sizes too big, I figured she could wear it right over top of her 4 sweaters. It was very expensive, and my robbed piggy bank would never have had enough pennies if my parents hadn't helped me buy my special present for Mary. Early on Christmas Eve, I hurried over to Mary's shack, carrying my big bundle wrapped up in brown paper and tied with a big red ribbon. "Merry, Merry Christmas," I shouted outside her shack. "What's this, mister?" she exclaimed when she opened the door. I held out the package, and she shyly took it from me. "Come in," she whispered. "Come in." Right in front of her wood stove, she ripped off the paper, pulled out the bright red parka. Quickly, she pulled it on over her sweaters, and for a moment we stood awkwardly staring at each other. Suddenly, I was embarrassed because I hadn't thought that maybe Mary would feel that she should have a gift for me because I had brought her a gift. Yet I knew she would have nothing to give. "Mom says for me to ask you to come over for Christmas dinner," I stammered. 4 o'clock. She laid the parka down over her wooden kitchen chair, took a piece of rabbit fur from her pocket, and began to stroke it gently. I knew she'd thought of something special when her brown eyes began to twinkle. "Hey, mister," she exclaimed, "tomorrow I'm going to give you the biggest gift in the whole wide world. Do you know what it is?" No, I stammered. "Guess," she exclaimed. "What is the biggest and best present in the whole wide world?" A castle?" I asked. No, not now," Mary interrupted. "Tomorrow for Christmas dinner. I'll bring it, but you'll have to guess." That night, instead of wondering when Santa was going to arrive, I wondered about Mary's special gift. What was the biggest and best thing in the whole wide world? At 4 o'clock, even before Mary could knock on our door, I threw it open and I yelled, "Is it as big as Buckingham Palace?" "Far bigger than Buckingham Palace," Mary chuckled as she stepped inside and took off her new parka, "and far more valuable. But it doesn't take up any space at all." "Gold? Is it all the gold in Fort Knox?" "Oh, more valuable than gold, and besides, gold is too heavy to carry. This you can take with you wherever you go." "Jewels! It must be jewels!" I exclaimed. "No, it isn't jewels. Robbers like to steal jewels, and this nobody can take from you." She poked her hand into the pocket of her tattered old sweater and pulled out the smallest box I'd ever seen. "Open it," Red Parka Mary demanded. For a moment I held it, wondering how this could be the biggest and best present ever. It wasn't big, nor was it heavy. When I took off the lid and looked inside the box, the contents didn't look very valuable either. I found a single small red heart-shaped bead laying on a bed of white rabbit fur. "That little heart, mister," she said softly, "stands for love. I can always give you love." I took her love that day as she folded her grandmother arms around me and squeezed me tight. And it was then that I knew that I loved the way she dressed, her straggly gray hair, her missing teeth, her brown wrinkled skin, and especially her eyes. Yet I can't help but wonder, why did someone, somehow, sometime, tell me to be frightened of those twinkling brown eyes?